to be no mystery to me. I don't want my history to be no mystery to me. I don't want my history to be no mystery to me. I don't want my history to be no mystery to me. I stole that little chant from my sister, and her name is Palami Prescott Adams. We are very good friends, and I hope that she doesn't mind me using it. I emailed her, but I don't know where she is. But either way, what I'd like to say is that my story is about harvest time. Harvest time. Because long before I knew about Kwanzaa, I learned about harvest time. And this was the time of year when my relatives gave honor and thanks for all the crops and all the crops that came in rich, and they got money from them, as well as from those crops where nothing came in. They still celebrated harvest time. So you see, when I think about the past, certain memories come to mind about the people and the impact that they had on my life, and which helped me to become the woman I am today. My family were farmers. They actually came from Africa. In the beginning, a black man and his wife owned half of Newnan, Georgia. Their names were William Jackson Smith and Cilla Wynn. They were married on January 22nd, 1883, just 18 years after slavery ended. William was the son of Jack and Callie, and his parents were slaves. Cilla was the daughter of Henny Wynn, whose parents were also slaves. Now this family had a lot of land, but let me tell you, William was a teacher and a preacher. He was a moderator of the Southern Baptist Association for some 27 years in the counties of Troup, Fulton, Decatur, and Coweta County. That encompassed the cities of LaGrange, Fulton, which is Atlanta. It encompassed also DeKalb County, and it also encompassed Newnan, Georgia. He also taught at Morehouse College. Cilla was a housewife, and she was a devoted mother to her 12 children. They owned a lot of land on the east side of Newnan. On that land, they had a farm, a cotton gin, a general store, a blacksmith shop, a syrup mill, and a lumber yard. Now, you know, it wasn't very easy back then for a black man who was an entrepreneur. All of the business people that he had to deal with to get his goods and his supplies for his farm, they lied and cheated and stole from him. So by the time William died, they had swindled him out of all of his land. So the land was put up for sale, and it was purchased by a kind-hearted man. Now, there was one son named Laura who had lived and worked on the farm all of his life. His wife's name was Margaret. Laura and Margaret are my grandparents. They had 14 children. So one evening, this kind-hearted man came to visit my Big Mama and Big Papa, because that's what I call them. I know them as Big Mama and Big Papa, came to visit my grandparents and asked if they would like to purchase some of the land back that had been swindled from them. That night, Big Mama and Big Papa talked it over among themselves and decided that they would buy it. So the next day, they drove to town on their horse and buggy, went to the bank, drew up the papers and signed them, and paid a down payment on their land. Now, Big Mama and Big Papa and their family, who had by then 14 children, worked really hard to make the payments on that land. Right after they made it through the Great Depression, along came World War II. And with World War II, 3 of those oldest sons were actually drafted. Now this, with 3 sons leaving home, it was going to put a big hardship on the family, because they needed those hands to work the farm. And there was just going to be only 1 son who was not drafted that was old enough to help Big Papa on the farm. So what happened is, Big Mama and Big Papa had a friend, an insurance man, who actually was able to help get a family hardship deferment for the family. And their son, Lovely, was able to stay home and help work the farm. So Lovely and his brother under him, named Laura Jr., worked hard helping Big Papa run the farm. Now pretty soon, it was over for Laura Jr. He was out. He says, I'm moving out. So he moved to Atlanta. He left the farm. And Lovely and Laura Sr. had to work the farm themselves. Now there were other children. In fact, there was an older sister whose name was Wellie. Now Wellie could do some work, but you know, back then, my grandparents came up at a time when women were to be educated. So she didn't really need to be working on the farm. Plus, she was in school. And before long, she went off to college. Spelman College, that is. Of course, there were younger children around, but they were too young to do any of that heavy farm work, like plow the fields, milk the cows, and shoe the horses. Plus, they were in school too, and Big Mama and Big Papa were determined that their children would be educated. But what the little children could do was, after school, they could come home and help do some work. So what they did was they planted the cotton, they chopped the cotton, and they picked the cotton. Year after year, Big Papa, Big Mama, and their children worked the farm. It wasn't easy for them, but they kept on going. One day, they got news that the war was over. World War II was over. And by the same time, farm work, farmland, and farm industry had begun to kind of phase out. But by that time, Big Mama and Big Papa were landowners. That land exists today, all 350 acres of it. My family's home is on that land, along with aunts and uncles and cousins and brothers living there too. They live on a street that is called Laura Smith Road in Newnan, Georgia. Laura Smith is my Big Papa. These stories were told to me over and over again when I was a young girl. And Big Mama and Big Papa was determined, had the self-determination to really work hard for what they wanted. Now, Big Mama always said, You need to know these stories because if you don't know where you've been, how you going to know where you're going? So I tell these stories to people, young people, every day, as many times as I can, especially the young generations under me. Because you know what? I don't want their history to be no mystery to them. I just don't want their history to be no mystery to them. So I give thanks and I honor my ancestors here today. William Jackson Smith and Cilla Wynne and Laura and Margaret Smith. Thank you.
Wonderful Gloria Elder sharing her story. Beautiful. Gloria Elder, our Kuumba secretary and author of I've Walked a Mile in Her Shoes, Stories of Unconditional Love. I'm ahead of myself. I've already lit the Ujima candle. And so all we need is an Ujima story. And that's coming from Ernestine Brown. She's our Kuumba vice president. She's also the author of Mama Tales. And she has 2 CDs also. So give it up for Ernestine Brown.
Collective work,
And responsibility.
sometimes we have to be forced to do something collectively. And my story today is about an old woman who lived in a corner of the village in Africa, and she lived all by herself. And one day she got up and she said, I'm lonesome. I need a pet. I think I'm gonna buy me a pig. And so she walked down the path and into the marketplace and she bought herself a pig. Well, she was coming home with that pig and she and the pig were quite happy when on the path, stretched before them, was the midsection of a huge snake. She looked at one end, and it was in the tall bushes. She looked at the other end, and it was in the tall grass. She didn't know how far it was going to go in that way, or how far it went that way. But she knew that she better not go around the wrong end, or that would be the end of her and her pig. She thought about it a while, and then she said, I guess there's nothing for us to do, pig, but jump over the snake. So she went over and she said to the pig, Pig, jump over this snake. Well, the pig looked at her with her rude tone and the pig didn't move. And she said, Pig, I said to you, jump over that snake. And the pig looked at her and didn't move. So she looked around and she saw a dog. And she said, Dog, bite that pig. Because pig won't jump over the snake and I'm never going to get home tonight. Well, the dog heard those rude tones and said, didn't move. She looked around and she saw a stick. And she said, Stick, beat the dog. The dog won't bite pig. Pig won't jump over that snake. And I'm never going to get home. The stick just laid there. She looked around a little more. She saw some fire. And she said, Fire, burn the stick. Because stick won't beat dog. Dog won't bite pig. Pig won't jump over the snake. And I'm never going to get home tonight. The fire did not burn the stick. It just tripped along. So she looked around a little while and she saw some water. She said, Water, put out the fire. Because the fire won't burn stick. Stick won't beat dog. Dog won't bite pig. Pig won't jump over the snake. And I'm never going to get home tonight. The water just sort of rippled along. She walked along till she found a big ox. And she said to the ox, Ox, drink the water. Because the water won't put out fire won't burn stick, stick won't beat dog won't bite pig, pig won't jump over the snake, and I'm never gonna get home tonight. But the ox just looked at her. So she went. Now she's almost into town. But she sees the shop of the butcher. Now the butcher makes his money slicing meat, and he had that big knife out. And she said, Butcher, go scare that ox. Because ass won't drink water, water won't put up fire, fire won't burn stick, stick won't beat dog, dog won't bite pig, pig won't jump over the snake, and I'm never gonna get home tonight. But she was so rude, the butcher looked the other way. She turned around in the butcher shop, started to go out, and she looked down on the floor and she saw a rope. And she said, rope, rope, tie up the butcher! Because the butcher won't scare the ass, ass won't drink water, water won't put up fire, fire won't burn stick, stick won't beat dog, dog won't bite pig, pig won't jump over the snake, and I'm never gonna get home tonight. But the rope just lay there. So she started to leave the shop, and she saw a mouse. And she said, mouse, mouse, gnaw the rope! Because rope won't tie up, butcher, butcher won't scare ass, ass won't drink water, water won't put up fire, fire won't burn stick, stick won't beat dog, dog won't bite pig, pig, pig won't jump over the snake, and oh, she's never gonna get home tonight. Nothing happened. She steps outside of the shop and she says, you know, maybe I'm going about this the wrong way. And the minute she had that thought, the clouds parted, the sun shone. She saw a scene that looked like a postcard. Beautiful barn, and the sun shining down, cat sleeping in the sun, a big cow chewing her cud, and a farmer raking the hay in the fields. And so she said, let me try this a different way. She walked over to the cat, and she said, good morning, Mrs. Cat. How are you today? And the cat said, morning to you. I'm fine. What can I do for you? She said, well, I have a little problem. And she explained her problem to the cat. And she said, perhaps if you would just pounce on that mouse, my problems would be solved. The cat said, I usually don't go mousing for anybody but me, but you're so polite. I think, well, yeah, I'll tell you what, I will pounce at the mouse if you bring me some milk. She said, milk? Oh, the cow. She ran up to the cow and she said, good morning, Mrs. Cow, and how are you today? And the cow said, morning to you. What can I do for you? She said, well, I have a little problem that only a little bit of milk would solve. Could you possibly give me a little milk? And the cow said, I never give milk to anybody but the farmer. But you're so polite. Yes, you can have some milk if you bring me some hay. Hey, the farmer, she boogie-boogie'd all across that field, and she went to that farmer, and she stood and waited for him to notice her. And then she said, good morning, Mr. Farmer. And the farmer said, good morning, polite old lady. What can I do for you? Well, I have a little problem, and all I need to solve my problem is some hay. Oh, I don't want anybody to touch my hay. But you're so polite. Okay, you can have all the hay you want. Well, she wasn't greedy. She only took one armful. And she took that armful of hay and brought it over to the cow. And then she stepped back and patiently waited while the cow chewed the hay, and chewed the hay, and chewed the hay. And you know cows do it twice, so she waited while she chewed the hay again, and chewed the hay, and chewed the hay, and finally the hay was gone. While the cow was chewing, she looked around and found a small, big, broad leaf, and she put that leaf under the cow, and she began to milk just enough for the cat. And she went over to the cat. She put the milk down, and she said, here's your milk, and stood back politely, waited while the cat lapped it up, and lapped it up, and lapped it up, and lapped it up some more, and lapped it up, and finally, the milk was gone. And then, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, things began to happen. Because the cat began to chase the mouse began to gnaw the rope began to tap the butcher began to scare the ox began to drink the water began to put out fire began to burn the stick began to beat the dog began to bite the pig went, yow! Jumped over that snake, and the old woman got home that night.
we have a couple of more stories. And now we get to celebrate and recognize the night that it is tonight. Habargani. 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 I like lighting these candles. Oh, did I? No, red. Yep, thank you. I hear you. I was just testing you. Wonderful. Ujamaa, cooperative economics. So we need to buy in our what? Community. We need to give in our what? Vendors, people who are creative, you need to make your talent, the things that you sell available in your what? Community. And so, bringing us our Ujamaa story, we have Amy Johnson, who has been telling for 4 years, and I must say, Amy is a real good cook. Don't you do catering, Amy? No? Okay, don't try to get her. But you know, it is a talent that you could bring to the what?
Community.
Ujamaa.
Now, you know, I didn't come up here to preach, but when she mentions that catering is a talent that you could bring to the community, I have to tell you that I tried it for a minute, and I have to remind community that when people bring you their gift, their talent, that it has value. So since community didn't really value catering the way it would have to be valued for me to be able to eat, I went back to bank examining. Okay. So keep that in mind, folks, when you are approaching a vendor, because those talents, those gifts, they take time. They take a lot of work and energy, and you want to show respect for the work and energy that your community puts into. So, Ujamaa, to build our own stores and shops and businesses, to create product, to buy and sell from one another, to buy and sell from one another, and to profit together from it. This story is a very popular Kwanzaa story, and I do believe it has every principle in it. Starting with Ujamaa, Ujamaa. I can't get anything but Ujamaa out now. Ujamaa, and going right down to Imani. Every principle is in it. So I invite you to listen to 7 Spools of Thread, and I hope that you'll enjoy it. Long ago, in an African village, a village of the Ashanti people in the country of Ghana, in West Africa, there lived an old man and his 7 sons. Now the sons were very handsome lads. They had smooth brown skin, the color of rich mahogany. They stood straight and tall. They had straight, strong limbs. And they were smart boys. They didn't have any problem with working hard either. They believed in it. And still, the old man was not satisfied with those boys. He was very disappointed with them. And here's why. Those boys argued and fought among themselves from sunup to sundown. From sunup till they went to bed. As soon as the sun brought forth a new day, they started right in arguing with one another. If one said the weather was hot, the other said it was cold. And somebody else says, "Oh, I feel a cool breeze blowing. It's perfect. I don't know what's wrong with you all." Well, I say it's about to rain, so it's not so great after all. That's the way it went around that house. Always an argument. At the end of the day, when it was time to put away their tools and go in from their work, they were farmers, you know, and they had been out hoeing or planting, whatever the season called for at that point. If one said, "It's time to go in, I think we should finish this row," and be done for today. Then another would say, oh, you're so lazy. You always want to go in so soon. I say we could do another 3 rows. And somebody else might say, I'm not staying out here in the dark. And so it went on. Now the father, because he had grown older, was at home. He didn't go out into the field, but he prepared the meal for the boys. And he always did his best and looked forward to having them come home and enjoy it. But when those boys got home, it was another argument. It was, I didn't get enough. I don't have enough. You got more than I did. Before those boys finished arguing, the stew was cold and the fufu was hard. Some nights, the father would be so disappointed and depressed that he would just go to bed and leave the table, not bothering to eat. Well, one sad day, the old man died. And when he died, he was buried quickly, as is the Ashanti custom. The next morning, the village chief called those boys to his hut at sunrise. The brothers all lined up in front of the chief's hut to hear what he had to say. The chief stepped out and he informed them, your father has left an inheritance. Oh, the boys got excited. Of course their father left an inheritance. He had lots of land, lots of property. They started to talk among themselves. Oh, I know he left it all to me because I'm the oldest. Oh no, he left it all to me because I'm the youngest. I don't know what you're talking about. He left it all to me. I was his favorite. Well, they got to arguing and pushing and shoving one another. The next thing they were rolling around on the ground. Stop that this instant! The boys got up from the ground. They brushed themselves off. They lined back up in front of the chief. Your father has left instructions that his property is to be divided equally among you. But first, before the moon rises in the sky tonight, you must turn these spools of thread into gold. Gold? How would we do that? The chief proceeded to hand out the spools of thread. To the eldest, he gave a blue thread. To the next, he gave the red thread. Then the yellow thread to the next son. And orange, green, black, and white on down the line. Now, you have not much time. You'd better hurry. And remember, if you argue or fuss or fight or raise your hands to one another in anger this day, then you will be turned out of your home as beggars, and all of your father's property will be given to the poorest villagers. Go quickly now. You haven't much time. The boys all ran back to the house, and for the first time ever, no one said anything. They were quiet until the eldest spoke and said, I did not realize that our arguing hurt our father so. The youngest said, yes, I did not know it either. We will not argue anymore. Let us agree. And they all agreed that in memory of their father, they all put their hands together and now acknowledging that they wanted to remember their father by behaving the way that he would have wanted. Then the fourth son spoke up and he says, I don't believe that father would have us turned out of our home as beggars. No, I don't believe that either. If father says that we should turn this thread into gold, then there's a way to do that. And so they started to talk about it. One son said, perhaps there are nuggets of gold in this thread. Another son said, you're so silly. Of course there are. As the other brothers turned and looked at him, he reconsidered. Well, brother, that is a good idea, but I don't see any nuggets in this thread. Finally, one said, perhaps we could weave this thread into cloth and sell the cloth and get gold for it. Ah, yes, I think so, said another. Well, I think it's a good idea, but we don't have enough of any one color to weave a length of cloth. No, that's true, but we could weave a cloth of many colors. Well, that is a good idea, but our people do not wear cloth of many colors. They tend to wear one color. Well, I think that we are going to have to weave a cloth that is so fine that everyone will want to wear it. And so they set about their work. Some of the brothers went off to the woods to get wood to build a loom. They built their loom, and then the brothers took turns weaving the cloth, each one bringing his color in his turn. As they wove patterns of beautiful stripes of many colors and patterns that looked like the wings of birds. We know that cloth as kente cloth today. They wove that cloth. When they had finished, they folded all the cloth up, put it in baskets, put the baskets on their heads, looked up, and the sun had started to go down on the other side. They rushed to the market in the village. When they got to the village, they opened up a length of cloth and began to call out, "Come, see the most beautiful cloth in the land. Come, we have the most finely woven cloth you have ever seen. Please come and see our cloth." The villagers all gathered around. They were exclaiming how beautiful the cloth was. Some wanted to hold it, and when they held it, they said, "Ah, this is truly a fine cloth." Then villagers started to part the way, for there was a man dressed in magnificent robes coming to the front. When he stepped forward, this man was the king's treasurer. He also exclaimed, "Such beautiful cloth! Let me hold that cloth." And when he touched it, he knew that was the finest cloth he had ever held. "I must have this cloth for the king." The brothers consulted together. Then the eldest spoke. "Cloth fit for a king is worthy of a high price that only a king can pay. You may have this cloth for a bag of gold." "Fine," said the treasurer. "I will give you a bag of gold." He emptied the gold into the hands of the eldest son. The other brothers folded the cloth, handed to him, and they headed back to the village. For you see now, the moon was beginning to come up. They rushed back and lined up in front of the chief's hut. Chief's hut. The chief came out, and they informed him, "We have turned the thread into gold." "You have you? And have you argued at all today?" "Oh, no, chief. No one has argued today." "Well then, I believe you have learned the lesson that your father sought to teach you. His property and all of his possessions belong to you now. You may divide them as you see fit." Oh, all the brothers were so relieved. They began to dance around and they were very happy. All but one, the youngest brother. "Son, my son, what is it? You do not seem happy." "Well, Chief, I am happy. I did not want to be turned out of my home to be a beggar. But what about the poorest villagers? They still have nothing." And at that point, the second son spoke up. Perhaps we could teach the villagers to make the cloth the way that we did." "Oh, yes, that's a wonderful idea." And so the next day, they invited anyone in the village who wanted to learn to come and learn to make the beautiful cloth. The villagers came, they learned to make that cloth. The village became famous for the beautiful kente cloth.
the village became famous, and the brothers went back to their farming. But it seemed as though their crops grew better than ever before. They just had wonderful harvest every harvest season. They had plenty for themselves and plenty to sell to the villagers. And the villagers who were now selling cloth had plenty of money to buy the harvest. And the villagers began to go out to other towns to sell their cloth. There was money and prosperity for all. That is Ujamaa.
Wonderful. We have another story, a final story. Our last storyteller to come forth is going to be Brother Salim, also known as the Barefoot Sage. He's a storyteller, he's a dancer, he is a choreographer, he's a drummer, and he's also an author. Congratulations to Salim. And so, come on, Salim, and he's our grand finale.
Who wants to help my brother Saeed here? Come on. I have 3 drums. Who wants to drum? Come on. Who wants claves? All right. Now when I say crick, you say crack, crick, crack, crick. When I say crick, you say crack, crick, crick. All right, old schoolers, slide stone, sing this with me. You can make it if you try. You can make it if you try. Push a little harder, put a little deeper. Don't let the plastic bring you down. All together now, yeah, 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 yeah. This leads into my story about Kuchi Chakulia. It's also a story about Kumba creativity because I wrote it myself. And anytime I go, all together now, I want to hear that, yeah, 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 yeah. All right, now this is called Juggling Joe Jr. A family went to the park for a cookout. It was 3 of them. Joe, Jada, and their son, Joe Jr. Now as they sat on the canopy, waiting for the burgers and hot dogs to get done, Joe said to his son, Junior, why don't you go to the playground and play with your friends? Okay, Dad, said Junior. And then he started for the playground. But he had a little rhythm in him. And on his way there, he heard the sound of drums. And he started moving. And he followed it to a clearing where he saw a drummer, a dancer, but he saw something else that took him in. He saw a man who was trying to juggle to the rhythm of the drums. Then the juggler spotted Junior looking at him. Suddenly the juggling and the drumming stopped. Then he went and started to hand the balls to Junior. Can I get a Junior? Anybody, come on. Junior! All right. All right. Okay. Junior, want to try?
Come on, Junior.
Do it. That was good. But then Junior finally just gave up and said, I can't juggle. Now, this upset the juggler. What was the one word that Junior said that the juggler did not like? Yes, then the drum started again, and the juggler sang this to Junior. He's saying, you can make it if you try. You can make it if you try. All together now. So this is what the juggler decided to do. He said, Junior, come here. Let me teach you. He gave a juggling lesson. Oh, and anybody else who wants to learn, come up. I've got more balls. All right, you started. All right, come on. Let's start with one ball. And start just by passing it from one hand to the other. Just get comfortable with that.
Feels good.
Okay. Feel ready to go to 2?
No.
You can make it if you try. You can make it if you try. All together now. All right. Now we try 2. Circular motion. That's self-determination there. Yes, that does happen when you're learning to juggle. But the juggler wasn't finished. Not with Joe or with the other student. They kept going. And then the juggler said, you got 2 with 2 hands, now try 2 with 1. That's You can make it if you try. You can make it if you try. All together now. All right. Now, they kept trying. That is until Junior's father told them that the burgers are ready and they had to go to eat. But the juggler gave 3 balls to Junior and told him to practice. And so, Junior went home and every day he practiced 2 with 2 hands. At first he couldn't get the 2 with 1 hand, but eventually one day he transferred to 1 hand. He didn't get the circular motion. He got this. But he also, while he was practicing, saw his parents watching him practice and cheering him on by singing, what? You can make it if you try. You can make it if you try. All together now. That gave him the encouragement he needed. And eventually, he's doing the circular motion. He practiced the circular motion with 1 hand for days. Until one day, he got the fake Imani to try using the 3rd ball. He was doing 2 with 1 hand and threw up the 3rd. once he got it, he couldn't stop. Every day he was practicing. Every day he was showing off. At home, at school, although there were times the teacher had to take the balls from him because he was juggling in class while she was trying to instruct. But he got it, and then one day went back to the park. He saw the juggler. The juggler was juggling. And then Junior started juggling along with him. That's when the juggler stood